Why, hello. I don't know what to say here because I just put improvise. Remind me not to join the improv club. Hello everyone, my name is Anthem of the Sirens and welcome to an anime review. I have not copyrighted the name Anime Review, so until then this entire series is just untitled, if you can call this a series. Just kind of roll with it. And today we are going to be reviewing Fire Force. Fire Force is an anime that follows a boy named Shinra Kusakabe, who has a pyrokinetic power where he shoots fire out of his feet, and yes, he does use it to fly. Because Shinra's ability is unique, he is recruited by a Fire Force company which, believe it or not, does not actually put out fires. Instead, they kill infernals, who are living beings that happen to have fire-like characteristics. They were once human, but now they're not, and they have a lot of destruction and killing people on the brain. Now, as for people who do put out the fires, they do have another group for that. But they're not part of the same company as a Fire Force. They're related, but they're not really the same. It's honestly kind of confusing. Fire Force, I personally found to be a very interesting show. And here's the thing, if you're ever going to try and introduce it to someone, it's probably best if you leave out some of the details, because when you end up overthinking the show, it kind of becomes weird, and the premise will be a little hard to explain. It especially does not help if you end up starting the show in the middle instead of the first episode. And now I know what you're thinking. What kind of doofus would do that? Me. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I ended up starting on the third episode of the show instead of the first episode because my friends were watching it and this is my first introduction to it. So being the idiot that I am, I ended up asking all these questions like, what is this? Why is this? Why are you fighting fire with fire? Isn't that very illogical and pretty much the opposite of Fire Force? And then my friend stopped me and said, hey ass face, why don't you go home and watch this from episode 1? And then I looked him straight in the eye and said, all right, I will. Now that being said, where was I? Oh, right, yeah. Fire Force is an interesting show. The whole premise could essentially be summed up with, what if you fought fire with fire? And you also might be asking yourself, well, if your enemies are on fire and essentially made of fire, why are you using fire to fight them? Wouldn't that make them more stronger or, Lord forbid, heal them? Well, the show did say you gotta aim for the heart to actually kill them, but then again, that still begs the question why you're using fire abilities in the first place, because, yeah, don't overthink this, people. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to talk about the characters of Fire Force, starting with Shinra Kusakabe. He is our main lead, and he's kind of an excited, loud, hot-headed dude, almost like every shonen hero in the world of anime. He is also gifted with the tragic backstory of losing his family in a great big fire that everyone blamed him for. And he also has this dream of being a big hero that's wanting to save everyone. And he's had this dream ever since he was very young, even before he lost his family. So what I find kind of funny is that the fact that people are blaming him for the fire that killed his family just makes him more motivated, as if he's going to prove them wrong by showing, hey, I can be a hero. I'm not a bad guy. My family died because of an accident, not because of me. And it actually makes for a pretty interesting motivation. He also has this tick that when he's nervous or anxious, he forms like this evil smile or grin, as shown here, and a lot of promotional material involving Shinra. Yet, despite this being like an iconic thing of his, or whatever you want to call it, it doesn't really happen a lot, and it rarely happens throughout the show, and it mostly happens in flashbacks, believe it or not. And now we're going to get into our side characters. Here we have Arthur, a boy in Company 8 who thinks he is a knight and tries to act like a knight, and he even goes as far as to name his sword Excalibur. His sword is not really a sword per se, it is a stick where he can produce a flame out of the tip, a plasma flame that is. You also have Maki, the best girl in the show, freaking fight me. Her pyrokinetic ability is that she can summon 2 fire spirits and essentially treat them as pets, and she can also control flames from a distance. Her personality is very interesting. At one moment when things are serious, she can act all tough and brutal and kind of femme fatale, kind of like, come on, try harder, or come on, fight me, how dare you hurt my friends. And then other times she's all cute, kind of soft and cuddly, and just all around too kind for this world. Also in Fire Force Company 8, you have Akataru, the leader of Company 8, and his second in command, Takahisa. His pyrokinetic ability is honestly not that kind of impressive in retrospective. What he essentially does is that he turns BB guns into lethal weapons. Yeah, I know it kind of sounds weird, but he does explain it, and just explain it myself would be kind of a disservice and would just ruin the whole... Well, let's just move on. Now I know what you're thinking, what's Akataru's power? He is the leader of this company. Clearly he must be powerful. He doesn't actually have a pyrokinetic power. He just uses whatever is at his disposal along with brute strength. And what's even kind of interesting is that Takahisa and Akitaru happen to have contradicting personalities. Takahisa is more stern, commanding, and really takes the job seriously. And while Akitaru does take the job seriously, he often appears more relaxed and he's not as stern as Takahisa. You also have a temporary member in Fire Force Company 8 named Tamaki Kotutatsu. She was originally part of Company 1, but now has to serve in Company 8. She has the power to turn herself into a Fire Cat Girl by essentially growing Fire Cat Girl ears and a Fire Cat Girl tail. She also has a lot of bad luck, which causes her to become the main fan service character of the show and is often put in sexual situations. It's also worth noting that Tamaki is a tsundere, very, very much. Also in Fire Force Company 8 is Iris. She is the priestess of the group. She essentially prays for the people they kill to make it look all more humane because these Infernals used to be human. And they've had friends and family, and seeing them killed is definitely going to be devastating. So they definitely make it look humane and try and reassure them, hey, it's okay, they're in a better place. She is definitely the most calmest of the group, and much like Maki, she has a really soft spot and she's very nice, only she doesn't also have a hard spot either. She also has a bit of shyness to her as well. She's basically the goody two-shoes nice girl of the group. Without wishing to spoil, or at least try not to spoil, we do meet more characters along the way, especially in the middle of the show. Two of these characters that we meet become Fire Force Company 8, while others are not really part of the but they do serve as allies. And we also do meet some of the villains, which I won't really get into too much because, as I mentioned before, spoilers. Overall, I think those are relatively good characters for the most part, my favorites being, of course, Maki and Shinra. Oddly enough, we don't see much backstory towards all the characters I listed. Most of the backstory we do see is from Shinra, being the obvious one, Iris, and Akitaru. And Iris does share some backstory with another character who I did not mention for the sake of spoilers. Well, it's not really much of a spoiler. It does happen early in the show, but I'm just one of those people that I feel like you'd be best experiencing this show have you watch it for yourself. Now, aside from characters, I think Fire Force has some really good world building. We get to explore how everything essentially went to crap, and the creation of Fire Force Company 8, and as I mentioned before, we also learn the backstories of the characters and how the state of the world affected their lives. Oh yeah, I never mentioned this in the premise, but the world went to No, I'm not talking about the real world. I'm talking about the world in Fire Force. The world in Fire Force went to What happened was that there was a great big disaster, which can essentially be summed up as just a huge fire burning almost every single part of the world, making most of the places on Earth absolutely uninhabitable. With this setting in mind, you could definitely define Fire Force as a post-apocalyptic show. And with this in mind, it definitely is kind of odd seeing the city where our main characters live just seem all functioning and well-being. You know, sure, most of the world just burned up, but you know, I gotta get to work and I gotta get the paper. Assuming no one has gone infernal yet. As you progress throughout the show, you'll notice there is surprisingly a lot of religious imagery in the show. An example of this is the Fire Force Company 8 base looking like a church, and it also adds on to the fact that Iris is a priest who prays for the victims. And there's also a backstory where two characters lived in a church and served as nuns, and that church got burned down and affected them both differently, where they both adopted different viewpoints. It's also worth noticing, while I'm not trying to ruin anything here, but we do meet a villain organization called the White Clad, and their outfits are very reminiscent of the Crusaders. We must take back the Holy Land. Oh wait, the Holy Land's burned down. Well then we must find a new Holy Land and take it back. So I may be looking too deep into this, and it's going to sound weird considering how the fact I've used a Crusader bit early on, but there's definitely some themes of religion and how people will use religion to justify their cause, whatever it may be. For Company 8, it's to make the killing of Infernals look more humane and to reassure the victim families that it's okay, they're in a better place now. For the White Clad, Well, the White Clad is essentially a doomsday cult that believes every fang being burned is a good thing, and that there will be another event like the big fire that burned everything. And they essentially want this to happen because humanity sucks. And as I said before, I could be looking too deep into this, and maybe I overthought this and thought that there is some imagery of religious warfare to some extent. That or it's just using religious imagery for the sake of using religious imagery. I did personally think this was a very interesting touch, whatever the cause may be. But regardless, I am guaranteed two things. One, I gave Mother's Basement a good idea for a video. And two, there is probably going to be some fedora tipping euphoric neckbeards boasting about how they're right and everyone else is wrong about a very touchy subject in the comments below. Oh, good lord, what have I done? Let's move on. Now, if you've happened to have been watching anime for a while, or just happen to watch a particular show in general, you'll notice that Fire Force looks a little similar to another show. I'll give you some time to guess of what Fire Force looks like. It's Soul Eater. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this anime is indeed similar to Soul Eater. I mean, after all, the manga that this anime is based on is also written by the same guy who wrote the Soul Eater manga. That person's name is Atsushi Okubo. I apologize if I mispronounced that. Now, I have not really read any of this guy's manga, and he also has not really wrote a lot of titles, just about 4 titles, if I remember correct. If I'm proven wrong, future me can correct myself in post. However, judging by pictures of B.I, he definitely has a certain style that he is going for his manga. Now, Mr. Okubo does have some motifs, especially on characters, when it comes to his manga, such as like the chaotic, evil grin smile, which is something I happen to notice on Soul from Soul Eater and Shinra from the show I'm currently talking about. It's also worth noting that Tamaki looks like Maka a little bit. I don't know if it's just me, but I definitely noticed that similarity. Also, this guy called Benimaru, I thought he looked like Stein if he just really mellowed out. To further bang on about this Soul Eater look-alike thing, Mr. Okubo has also done the King Arthur Excalibur thing again. In Soul Eater, there's this character called Excalibur who turns into a legendary sword. I like Soul Eater, but I may have forgotten about him. Oh, and this is not related to Soul Eater or anything, but this scientist guy, he looks like the main character from Catherine if he went insane. And now it's time to talk about the animation. It's pretty good for the most part. Fire Force definitely has a particular style, as it might become in future anime based on the works of Mr. Okubo. I want to go back to the Soul Eater comparison, because Soul Eater had a gothy and punky style, whereas Fire Force has more of a light superhero comic book kind of style. Now granted, Soul Eater was not entirely dark from that description. It did balance its dark, serious moments with more wacky, comedic moments. And while Fire Force definitely does the same thing. Fire Force's serious moments were not entirely too dark, and its comedic moments were not too cartoony and bouncy like in Soul Eater. Now I'm going to break away from the Soul Eater comparisons. Believe me, it's the last time I'll be doing it, I promise. Now this is an action show, and in several cases of anime and a good show that labels itself as action, it must have some good fights. Are the fights in Fire Force good? For the most part? Yeah. My favorite fights in the show are definitely the ones with Shinra in them, because there definitely is a sense of speed within his fights. My most notable one is near the ending where he fights... I'm not gonna spoil that. I said it's near the ending, but I'll definitely do my best to explain why I think it stands out. What I think makes Shinra's fights so memorable to me is that I get a sense of speed due to his power, because Shinra is just flying around all over the place because of the fire he shoots out of his feet, and he also learns to get faster as well. Also, because Shinra's power is applied to be unique, there's also a sense of impact for when he attacks his opponents, and the flames he shoots out of his feet just seem a lot more it just seems a lot more intense than most of the fire powers you see on the show. And because of it, there is a sense of energy and impact to them. Now, unfortunately, the fights do suffer from the usual shonen problem of having a lot of dialogue in between the action. However, it is not very prevalent in Fire Force as it is in, say, other shows in the shonen genre. It is worth noting, however, that Fire Force is getting a second season. If that second season ends up catching up to the manga, we probably might be seeing more slower fights, maybe ones that drag on too long, that just try and stretch out the whole thing. And that does kind of worry me a bit. But for right now, for the current show, the current season I'm reviewing, I don't know why I keep reviewing shows that are getting confirmed second season. That beside being the case, in season 1, it is honestly not too bad. Most of the dialogue is just the usual, ha ha ha, good is dead, hope is dead, evil's the way. Evil will never win. As long as I hold on to hope, strive for the good fight, believe in myself and my friends, I will defeat you, Baddie McMagny. And, you get the picture, ladies and gentlemen. The only flaw I really noticed in Fire Force is that it does suffer from the usual shonen cliches. However, Fire Force does just enough to essentially distract the viewer and itself from being a shonen anime and not really paying too much attention to all those cliches that you often see in shonen shows. So in conclusion, Fire Force may have the outward appearance of a generic cliche shonen anime, but on the inside, it has memorable characters, cool fights, an interesting story, and great world building, and it just really stood out for me to just not really pass it off as a generic shonen anime. Now, that sounds kind of very artsy or critical of me, but believe me, by the end of this review, you won't really see me that way. But Fire Force is just definitely something that has stuck with me, and I'm definitely going to find myself recommending to people who are looking for just a good action show. And I believe Fire Force hits all the right notes in all the right places, and just like I said, distracts itself from being a shonen anime. That is why my final rating for Fire Force is a 4 out of 5 nicks. I probably lost all credibility with the big boy anitubers who think all anime should be Miyazaki movies, but I honestly could care less at this point. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of this review. If you enjoyed it, give it a like. If you didn't like it, give it a dislike. Comment down below what you thought of this video or what you thought of the anime, or just want to leave a joke, do whatever. Follow me on Twitter at Anthem of Sirens, where I post whatever I feel like. And that's about it. Don't have much to say. Here's an outro that I have to improvise and play on guitar because last time I used a licensed song, YouTube just flat out copyright wrote me.
I changed my mind on the outro. I'm not going to show you my guitar playing skills. Here's something else instead.
See you all later. Peace.